FESIG, the Free Energy Special Interest Group, where science meets spirituality in the quest for truth and knowledge to free humanity and transform this planet into a paradise.
Hi, everyone. Hi, this is Crystal. I am the chair of FESIG meetings. Our co-chair, who is Dr. Frezel, is not present today because he has a very important appointment and he can't turn up, and he sends his apologies. I welcome you on behalf of FESIG to FESIG's 138th meeting. Today is the 9th of July. We hold our meetings usually on the first Wednesday of the month. But today I had to postpone it to the 9th because the first Wednesday of the month was 4th of July, 2nd of July. And it wasn't convenient because a lot of people had a lot of things on their hands, and the speakers, the second speaker could not finalize its reconfirmation. So here we are today. And I have the FESIG team with me here today. We have, I'm afraid Pontus didn't make it, couldn't make it either. I believe he's been traveling and couldn't come to the meeting. We have Henrik and Jerry from Sweden, and the two of them are at the helm of the FESIG R&D team with Dr. Frezel and the few of us at the helm, but there's quite a bigger team eventually in and out, joining in as and when they're free. So folks, it's really wonderful to have you here with us. And I would like to thank our first speaker, Tom Diferdinando, to help me gather the crowd here today. And there's quite a number of us, because he had announced in his groups as well this meeting. It's so wonderful to see new faces in our public meetings. Welcome all of you. If you're not familiar with FESIG's meetings, we are a platform where science meets spirit, and I'd like to allow me to share screen, because then I will introduce FESIG to you in a clearer way, so you can understand where we are coming from and where you are right here with us. Okay, right, I'm sharing screen now. I wish to put share sound in case I need to share Zoom windows. Share Zoom windows, I don't know what that is. Anyway, there we go. Right, so oops, not share, stop share. Oh gosh, Zoom has changed its features quite a fair bit, and sometimes you don't know what you're clicking on. So here we go. This is it. I think we can forget about sharing Zoom windows. I have to explore that. Okay, so we are looking at the Free Energy Special Interest Group. We are a platform where science meets spirit. I'm going to go through this very quickly because every video is a standalone recording, and sometimes people just watch one video. So it's necessary to introduce you to who the host is, okay? We are FESIG, your host, and every month we have the first Wednesday of the month, we meet up. Sorry, this time is the second Wednesday of the month because of certain issues I explained earlier. And I am Crystal Goh. I'm the founder of FESIG and the chair of all the meetings. Our co-chair is Dr. Frezel, who's not present today. And then the team at the helm are Pontus, Henrik, Matthew, Jerry. I don't know if Matthew's here, but here we are. So if you are wondering, if you don't see any announcement, you don't want to join into our database, it's fine, but we wish you would. So you will get the first-hand information as to what's going on. And we have been running for 9.5 years now. Our website is truevisionofpeace.com/FESIG.html. Go to our website because it gets updated every now and again, okay, with all the reports of the brilliant speakers that has come to our platform to speak, to share their knowledge so we can learn together, all right, and to be able to, get on with our divine mission in a very good way, because knowledge is power. So there you go. We are a platform where science meets spirit. And we are known as open-minded futurist freedom seekers group as well. So we are open to all teachings, welcoming creativity that pushes science and spirituality to the furthest frontiers in the pursuit of knowledge, seeking breakthroughs to succeed in our objectives of making this world a better place to live in. Well, it's a beautiful mission. Unfortunately, without the funds, we are not able to move fast because we have several R&D teams and we need to build quickly. And without the funds, we can't buy equipment, materials to move fast. So we urge you, if you have got extras, do pay forward. You can go into our website and you see this donate link. Just click on there. And if you got any connections like Johan does, we sure certainly could do with your help. All right? Because we have a big how shall I, a vision. All right, we're going to help light up the world. So there you go. So the first speaker we have today is Tom Diferdinando. He returns to speak of Dr. DeMeo's Orgone Biophysical Research Lab. It's the OBRL's work, okay? Tom will present, he has inherited, because the late Dr. DeMeo has passed over the reins to Tom. So Tom is now sitting on a hot seat, and it's a huge, big undertaking, and we applaud him for his bravery and his resourcefulness and dedication to continue with Dr. DeMeo's brilliant work in orgonomy. Tom today will present Tools to Rethink the Universe, Part 1, the Orgone Energy. This will be an illustrated presentation of orgonomy, Wilhelm Reich's Science of the Biology, Atmospheric and, Atmospheric and Cosmic Life Energy, and much more. Tom will go deeper into the subject, Reich's scientific thought, method, and approach, the implications for science generally, insight into the relationship between science and spirituality, and the reality of the cosmic ether, that is the Orgone energy continuum. And I've invited Mike Emery, some of the most brilliant quantum physicists, to come in and sit through this meeting as well, because it's relevant to his work in the bubble tech. So he's here with us here now. All right, so speaker two, folks, you jump in to the first session, right? I urge you to stay on for the second session, where once Tom has finished, the second speaker will be stepping in to present the transmission from the oversoul of synarchy. And this is from Graham Forscott. He's a returning speaker as well. He's a galactic astrologer. In the age of Aquarius, Earth becomes a conscious participant in the politics of the stars. There's a governance out there, folks, as well, because it's teeming with life forms. Graham's mission is to help starseeds, way showers, consciousness activists, and visionaries remember. His talk synopsis includes the shift from hierarchy to synarchy. Earth's induction into galactic oversight, and I think we are anticipating that now with Galactic Federation being taken over by the good ETs, and I think we're going to see a bit of a light at the end of the tunnel soon. And number 3, the 12-fold galactic departments. And number 4, Aquarian citizens of the stars. Number 5, galactic politics is evolutionary stewardship. I know some of these are a bit deep for some of you who hadn't been catching up with what's really going on the above the mundane life system here on this planet. Okay, so stay tuned, folks, okay? And once we finish with the Q&A, I mean, you're all most welcome to participate live with our speakers in the Q&A session. We will have about 20 minutes or half an hour for the Q&A sessions after every talk. But mind you, when the speaker starts to speak, we respect them with non-interruption for like until their presentation is over. Then, that's how we chair our meetings here. Then we will have a bit of an interaction, and then the forum, and then the Q&A session. So once everything's finished here, the 2 sessions, do pen down next time we meet in our 139th meeting on the 6th of August. Okay, if the dates change, it will be announced at our website. Like if you decide to attend physics meeting and the Zoom's not opening up, please go to our website and check what's happening. But usually it does on the dot every first Wednesday of the month, and starts at 6:30 p.m. UK time. Okay. So write to me, Crystal at truevisionofpeace.com, if you want to help or volunteer or fun or whatever, or introduce speakers. I am always so grateful if you would keep in touch with me that way. So our website, truevisionpeace.com/physics.html, and subscribe to our channels. Our YouTube channel is there. BitChute. BitChute has the most controversial videos. As you know, BitChute doesn't strike anybody who comes up with anything. It's fine. So we have the best performing videos in our BitChute channel. So go in there and see. Unfortunately, it's banned in the UK, BitChute, and I can't do anything, can't control and manage it from here either. So it's there in the other countries. Physics Odyssey channel, our Facebook will contain, I will be posting a lot of stuffs that we can learn together, as well as announcements about physics goings on. Our Telegram channel, physics_group, allows you to interact with the other members of our group, which consists of both scientists and spiritualists. And you can form your own study groups, because knowledge is power. We learn from the best minds of the world, and you need to confer with the others who are learning with you. So it's wonderful, isn't it? Having this great opportunity to study together and to improve our knowledge. As I said, knowledge is power. Right. So thank you, folks, for choosing to spend your time here together with us. I'm going to introduce Tom Diferdinando. I do so to honor them, so everybody knows who you're listening to and where they're coming from. Tom Diferdinando, BFA, is an innovative pain, injury, and trauma therapist, and the newly inaugurated director and president of the Orgone Biophysical Research Lab, OBRL. For decades, Tom has studied, investigated, and made contributions to the field of Dr. Wilhelm Reich's live energy science, orgonomy. He used Reich's discoveries to develop a natural scientific approach to hands-on healing in bodywork, based on the Orgone biophysics of pain, injury, stress, and trauma. For over 20 years, he worked as an associate in the lab of the late scientist James DeMeo, PhD, former director of the OBRL and author of many books and research papers on Wilhelm Reich and his discoveries. Tom has been invited to do presentations on both his own work and Reich's discoveries at USA Syracuse University, Southern Oregon University, Rutgers University, and the Swedish Institute in NYC, among others. OBRL has most recently sponsored 2 important events.
By the way, Crystal?
Sorry, I think I've been reading the long one.
You're doing the long one.
Sorry?
We'll be over 20 minutes if you do that one.
Yeah, I'm sorry. I thought it's the short one, but it began to continue into the long one. Anyway, so this is Tom. And if you want the long bio, you can always go to our website and look it all up from there. So that gives you an opportunity to visit our website as well. So thank you, Tom, once more for gracing our platform. Namaste, brother. Over to you.
Thank you very much, Crystal. I'm very excited to be here, and I hope with this presentation we'll not only have fun, but I hope it'll be a little bit thought-provoking. I like in your introduction how you point out your group is interested in kind of pushing the edges of the envelope there with the intent of bringing out the best in each other, and that's the spirit in which I'm going to be speaking. And I'm going to be reiterating a few of the points from the previous talk for those of you who might have seen that, but I'm going to go into a lot more depth and then hopefully kind of bring it together into a whole package. I'm going to bring up a PowerPoint here, and hopefully my face will still be on the screen at the same time somewhere.
Yes, you are.
Okay, great. Yes, this is called Tools to Rethink the Universe. Part 1, the Orgone Energy. Part 2, which sometime in the future we'll do, will be on armoring, but I will come to that. Just a little bit about Orgone Biophysical Research Lab. James DeMeo was the director of that for over nearly 50 years. And he had created it as a sort of a sanctuary, as it were, because he was basically excommunicated from university, because universities were and continue to be somewhat, very hostile to the work of Wilhelm Reich. And Dr. DeMeo was so moved by these discoveries of Wilhelm Reich, stunning foundational discoveries in like over a dozen disciplines, that he wanted to devote himself to replicating Reich's work to see if it was really true. And he was doing this in university. He was actually one of the first people doing that, and it just brought him trouble. So eventually, long story short, he just decided to start his own institute as a research and educational institute. Its primary function was to find ways of funding, just to fund his research, because he was, like I say, he was basically excommunicated. So after he died, I was asked to carry on keeping his books in print, taking care of his archives, and I'm also going to be carrying on a smaller version of the Orgone Biophysical Research Lab, where many of the missions will be the same. I'm definitely going to be going into all of Reich's work and all of Dr. DeMeo's replications and his own discoveries. I'm going to continue with that, but there's going to be one difference. Rather than focusing on the whole body of work, I'm going to be focusing on two of Reich's major discoveries, specifically the Orgone Energy and armoring. Part of the mission of OBRL, like I said, is not only the research and the education, but another angle is, and one of the reasons it's fun to speak to this group, is part of our goal is to help people apply these amazing insights from Reich's orgonomic life energy science in their own lives and in their own relationships. Because if it doesn't apply there, then what's the point, right? So I want to do what I can in my work to build those links, and I hope to do some of that with this talk today. That's just a picture of the lovely lab. That's out in Ashland, Oregon, up in the mountains, which is a great place to do Orgone energy research, where the atmosphere is way clearer than, for example, in a city. So I'm interested in Orgone energy and armoring. These are two tools to rethink the universe. Orgone energy, of course, is the cosmic life force. I'll go into more detail in a minute. Armoring is the mechanism of emotional repression in the human being. Part of my starting premise is, how do I say this? Reality is reality. The idea is, the way I come at this, and I come at everything, is it doesn't matter what our religion is, what our philosophy is, what our science is, what our culture is, how our view of interpersonal relationships. If we aren't acting on reality as it is, there's going to be trouble. It will push back on us. Reality, you can't get rid of reality. And the main way that it shows us where our thinking is off, where our approach, our choices are somehow off, is there will be anomalies, contradictions, and the best example in medicine is what are called side effects. The idea is that if you see something that you don't understand, you don't want to be premature in coming to a conclusion. Likewise, you don't want to ignore it either. You want to just sustain the anxiety about not knowing. Whatever the subject is you're exploring, if you just aren't clear about it, you got to be able to tolerate that tension. And another orgonomic group called the ACO, they have a nice little pithy way of putting it. They talk about observe, observe, observe. We're connected to the universe. We came from the universe. So all of universal knowledge is within us, right? So the idea is, if you just keep observing and observing and observing with as little bias as possible, eventually there's a moment where spontaneously the insight comes, the eureka moment, because the connection between you and nature is finally being made. But you can't do that if you try to force your bias on it, or if you want to try to force your own beliefs onto it, or if you're motivated by personal anxieties and don't want to acknowledge a truth or a reality that is actually right in front of you. So that's kind of my overall premise here. So I want to say just very briefly a little bit about the Orgone Energy and about armoring and about the relationship between the two. Okay, the Orgone Energy is the cosmic life force. It was discovered by Reich, and he identified many of its specific properties, which is unique. People often ask, why orgone? Why not call it chi? Why not call it ki? Why not call it prana or elan vital or animal magnetism? These are all terms that different people have come up with, different researchers and philosophers and anyone else, to try to identify this idea of this cosmic force that everybody on some level or other senses. The reason we use the word orgone is it's a scientific term. This is unique with Reich. It's a term for a very specific set of experiments that you can replicate in the laboratory that show there is this other phenomenon, this other reality that, again, on some level we sense, but it hadn't been objectified until Reich's time. It's important to emphasize it is a real energy. The life energy is a real energy. It's not just a concept. It also has many interconnected properties. It's spontaneously mobile, spontaneously pulsatile, has a cyclical character. It's excitable and compressible. It charges and radiates from all living and non-living substances. It's most strongly attracted to living things and to water and to itself. It's ubiquitous. It's a ubiquitous medium throughout space, throughout the cosmos. It's a dynamic energy. It's not a static thing. And it connects everything, physical universe, planets, and all of us. Armoring. Okay, the idea here is I'm looking at two tools for re-examining and rethinking the universe. Orgone Energy is one as a real physical energy, and then there's this process of armoring, which again is something that on some level we all know about it. We encounter it all the time. Again, our science and philosophy and religion tries to grapple with it, but nobody seems to know exactly what it is. Okay, Reich discovered there's actually a pattern of biological holding in the organism, and it binds up bioenergy both in psychic functions and in somatic functions. It binds up energy acutely under healthy conditions, like when you have to hold energy, but chronically under unhealthy and traumatic conditions, like under emotional trauma. It has the effect of diminishing perception, sensation, and emotion, especially sexual emotion, all with profoundly destructive consequences, both socially and for individuals. It is the wrench in the machinery of our troubled humanity. Orgone Energy is real, armoring is real. Even more important is that the relationship between the two is real. So what is that relationship? Okay, the reason the Orgone Biophysical Research Lab and myself and our team are so interested in focusing on Orgone Energy and armoring as the point of the spear, as it were, is because of the relationship between the two. The process of armoring in the organism diminishes our perception of and ability to appreciate the orgone. It doesn't completely block it out, but it diminishes it enough that we know it's there, but not quite. It's kind of like a faint echo. So it does find its way into our science and our philosophies and our religions, like I said, our culture and even our interpersonal relationships, but not quite. It's like something's there, but you can't quite put your finger on it. So I give an example here. I'm going to try to, I'm going to try to cut in and out of the, oh, never mind. I was going to try to stop the screen sharing so I can just talk to people for a second. Oh, here we go. Okay. So if in terms of these realities, but not quite sensing them, imagine if we were insensitive to the wind, just the air, the wind. You couldn't really feel it on your arms or your face, or you couldn't hear it. All right, so imagine a scientist who can't sense the wind. He's gonna describe a tree, right? And he's gonna draw and figure out the trunk and the branches and the leaves. But while he's studying the tree in nature, he's gonna notice every now and then that the leaves go, all right? And sometimes the tree will be going like this. And I'll go, that's an odd phenomenon. He doesn't know about wind. So he says, what's going on there? So he's going to start coming up with theories to try to explain it. He's going to start talking about the shaking tree syndrome, or the mysterious movement of the leaves, or if it's like if there's trash in the street and it starts moving, it's dead objects just spontaneously start moving. It's not going to make any sense because they're leaving out a big part of the reality. It's the same thing with armoring. It's a big wrench in the machinery. You figure if you have a machine and everything's working okay, and someone drops in a wrench in it, but for some reason you don't want to acknowledge there's a wrench there, then it doesn't make any sense why the machine's not working. So again, you try to come up with all these odd solutions and odd theories about why it's not working, and you just never really get results because, in fact, your inner wrench is preventing you from seeing the outer wrench. So that's an important point here. Let's go back to this. Now, because of the armoring diminishing the capacity to perceive the orgone, this brings up what I call the sticking point. And that's that the orgone is inherently spontaneous in its action. Its motion is spontaneous, and its self-organizing is also spontaneous. So its structure and its motion, they're fully integrated, and they come from the inside. It doesn't come from the outside. This is very difficult for people to grasp, and it's essential in understanding Reich's discoveries. In the armored world, we want things to be still. We want them to be quiet. We don't want them to move. Okay, we want to start at zero. We want to start with a blank slate and then build up from there. The idea of looking for reference points in a moving object is very disconcerting. In fact, because of our armoring, when we actually confront in nature spontaneous movement or spontaneous self-organization in behavior or in emotionally charged situations, for example, it's very unsettling and even perceived as a threat. And we want to do everything we can to stop that kind of action. So with the action of the orgone deadened in the organism, you can't fully perceive it. And this is a fact that's factored into orgonomic science, is the emotions and the blocked emotions of people, because that's going to affect your perception of the very thing that you're studying. Another important point is that with this inside-out phenomenon, if movement is coming from the inside, then, and you can't perceive that, you're going to have to find a way to explain the movement, and you're going to start coming up with an outside source to explain the movement and an outside source to explain the organization. So that's very important. So already you're starting to introduce new factors to try to make sense of what you're looking at. This, and I'm just setting up a few principles here, and I'll bring it all together. A consequence or a corollary with the sticking point is that because of this blocked capacity to feel the energy in our own bodies or perceive it, it results in a dualistic universe and irreconcilable opposites. Now, this is actually a big deal, and it's so pervasive that we just take it as a given, But dealing with reconciling opposites and dualism is a major role. It's a major role driving our religions and our science and our philosophies. There's this struggle with duality. In nature, all the dualities are spontaneously integrated. I mean, they just are. That's the way they function. But if you can't feel and sense that spontaneous capacity of organization, there's nothing holding the dualities together. And then we sense there's a relationship, but we can't quite make it. For example, I just put a list together here. If we look at mind and body, well, here, just look at, these are all dualities. We all talk about them because they're real, but we might not fully understand what they are. I mean, everybody knows mind and body are somehow connected. Male and female, obviously, are connected. Left brain and right brain, time and space, freedom and responsibility. You just go down the list. All these things, we recognize duality in the universe. It is part of the nature of the universe. Material and immaterial, positive charges and negative charges, the north and south pole of magnets, the objective world, the subjective world, energy and matter. Okay, we recognize dualities, but on some level, we sense they're connected, but we just don't quite get there. We know mind and body are connected, but somehow we just don't understand how. In nature, all these dualities actually spring forth from some unity. They branch out into these opposites, and then somehow reference the original source that they came from. And also developmentally, wherever you have opposites, they get reintegrated into a whole, or they just merge again. So for example, human beings with reproduction. You have a baby, and then another baby over there grows up into an adult, male and female come together, and they produce another baby. At the same time, if you look at the development of a baby, starting with the zygote, which is a single cell, right? That cell doubles into two, but is still integrated into a single function. Then it doubles again and is still integrated into a single function and doubles again. So it's constantly branching, but constantly being reintegrated back into unity. And we see this everywhere in nature. And it fits throughout all these, like I said, through the sciences, through philosophy, through art, and just through everyday life. Okay, one other important thing about this corollary and that the opposites, their connection, is that they also constrain each other. This is important in terms of research. With the armoring, you don't see the relationship between these dualities, and they aren't restraining each other. So if you look at structure and motion, for example, in nature, everywhere, structure and motion of any object are fully integrated, of living things. They're fully integrated. You can separate them conceptually. You can talk about structure, you can talk about motion, and that's okay. But eventually, if you're going to start forming a theory, it's got to show the relationship between structure and motion. In the armored world, you can separate them. And what happens is your imagination takes off, and you're driven by your own needs. If structure is not restricted by motion, you can start making up all kinds of theories about how life is structured, but it's not being restrained by the motion. And likewise with the motion, if it's not restrained by the structure. Let me give you a specific example. Right, a scientist or a microbiologist, they want to study the blood. Now, conventionally and classically, if you want to look at the blood, the first thing to do is they kill it. They kill the blood cells and they stain them, because the motion they're not interested in. They're just interested in the structure. And why? Because they feel like there's no reference points in motion. It seems to be chaotic and random, and you can't make a sense out of motion. So you want to look at the structure. Of course, then the problem is you're going to start extrapolating what you find from the structure out to all life, and it's not going to be true. And in medicine, this is where, again, we get back to side effects, right? Because you're using a paradigm of how to treat a person, and you've left out half of the reality. So there's going to be side effects instead of, exactly what you should be getting. Use freedom and responsibility as another example. Okay, a whole other realm. In there, the two restrict each other. And on some level, again, we know this. In Reich's psychology and psychiatry, it's recognized that freedom and responsibility are related to a natural capacity for self-regulation. And that's related to this oscillation of the energy that's inherent, okay? So freedom without responsibility, Reich would point out, is what you would call license. It's you can do whatever you want, but it's not restrained by a sense of responsibility, so it's very destructive. And likewise, responsibility without any freedom is going to be moralism. It's going to be restricted and rigid. It's going to be killing a certain amount of spontaneity. And then one more example I want to give that I find really fascinating is space and time. Now, if you look at space and time, how did we come up with the concepts of space and time? Well, in physics, they were looking at motion. They see everything in the universe moves, right? Or they use the word velocity. So they wanted to characterize it objectively. So they come up with spatial and temporal metrics, right? Kilometers per second or miles per hour. It's space per time. So they reduce velocity to spatial and temporal coordinates. And then they say, aha, that's nature. The fundament of nature is space and time. And now they start building all kinds of ideas based on space and time as being the foundation for nature and the nature of reality. But of course, it doesn't fit reality. So now, especially with the time of Einstein, they tried to come up with the space-time continuum. They're trying to put them back together because they know they're together, but they don't know how. But the problem is the reason they're talking about space and time in the first place is because they left out the velocity. They left out the motion. Again, they want to, armored society wants to kill motion and wants to start with things in a still state. All right, a fourth example, okay, we're interested in this relationship between science and spirituality. We know there's a relationship And we're struggling, even this group is formed to help bring those worlds together. We know there's a relationship, but we have trouble just really kind of pinning it down. So this is the last example I want to give. And I'm going to take this from Reich. Okay, Reich wrote a book called Ether, God, and Devil. Very profound book. And it was written to characterize his thought process. You know, he recognized that he was coming up with all these discoveries that nobody else was coming up with. And it was like, what's different about me? You know, how am I doing this? And he realized the thought technique he was using was different. That he was using a thought technique that was based on nature. He was thinking the way nature thinks. And he realized that nature thinks in terms of branching and unification, right? So he started looking at thought itself and realized that for the last 6,000 years, thought in human beings has been armored. And armored thinking splits into two halves. Instead of unity, it anchors the duality. So that on the one hand, you have what he called the mechanistic thinking. On the other hand, you had what you called mystical thinking. Now, he wasn't using these terms as a pejorative or meaning to be insulting or anything. These were actually like scientific terms. So the mechanist, the one who thinks mechanistically, reduces everything to parts. They don't have contact with that spontaneous organizing capacity of the orgone. So without that, because their own organism's blocked, now they're going to describe the tree, and they're going to see the trunks and the branches and the twigs and the fruit and the leaves and the roots, but they're not going to understand how they go together. And so they're going to enlist statistics. So this is an example of what I mean by we sense the orgone's there, but it's too far away. It's a distant echo. So we use statistics as an approximate way to understand how all those parts of the tree go together. We know they go together because we see it in every tree, but we don't quite understand how. So we have statistics as kind of a way of getting toward the orgone without actually getting there because we're struggling with our armor. On the mystical side, you can see with mechanism and mysticism, there's this relationship between parts and the whole. Okay, in the more mystical traditions, there's definitely a sense of the whole. There's a sense of everything being interconnected and interrelated. But the problem is, again, because of armoring, it's always over there. It's kind of distant. It's somehow unknowable or mysterious, or you need to go through an involved practice to connect with it and understand it. So Reich is arguing that this too is an expression of the armoring. You know, he was even saying that, you know, he was seeing God, our understanding of God, actually as kind of like a substitute to getting to our real connection with nature. You know, that again was we sensed it's there, but just fully aren't getting there. So I just talked about functional thinking. In the book, there's this one picture he shows, and there's some of the stuff here is blocking my view. Anyway, he's looking at, if you look at what the descriptions of the Orgone energy, which you can demonstrate in a laboratory, you know, it has all the qualities of what the mechanists were calling ether and what the mystics were calling God. That again, it was this idea, it wasn't that, because I had an associate a couple months ago ask me, well, did Reich believe in God or not? And it's actually not it's an incorrect question. It's a misleading question, because it wasn't that Reich believed in God or didn't believe in God. He saw God as our way of trying to approach nature, but not fully being able to get there, you see. So I'm bringing all this up to say there is this Orgone energy, this spontaneously pulsatile, self-organizing reality that you can demonstrate in a laboratory, but because of our armoring, we sense something of it, but we can't quite get there. And so part of the point of this talk is to raise these two tools so that in our own work, we can start reacquainting ourselves with that. You know, where do you start? What are these things? What does this even mean? All the stuff that I'm talking about. So now I want to talk about the ether, or what was called on the ether side of the equation. And I'm going to go a lot more detail into this than the more, you know, the God or the spiritual side. I'm going to emphasize a little more on the ether, because there's a lot of scientific evidence for this that a lot of you probably aren't aware of, but it's there. And Dr. DeMeo was very big on bringing this out. It's a spectacular book of his, The Dynamic Ether of Cosmic Space, Correcting a Major Error in Modern Science. And he points out that the cosmic ether changes everything. Once you recognize there is this dynamic thing happening throughout all space, and that all the experiments keep showing it, it completely changes conventional physics. Conventional physics is based on the idea that space is isotropic. It's all of its properties and everything are the same in all directions. But in fact, that's not true. As he points out in his book, he counts up to 17 researchers have shown there is this preferred direction of something. And this is on a sidereal map, which I'm not going to, hopefully those of you who know what that means, you'll know what it means. I won't try to explain it. On a sidereal map from basically the 5 o'clock to 17 o'clock, everybody keeps finding this flow of stuff through space, which coordinates movement throughout the solar system and throughout the galaxy. I'm going to start a little basic. Let me explain what was the ether. Okay, the whole reason they even came up with an ether was because they understood sound waves and they understood light waves. They knew sound waves needed air to move, that when there was no air, like in a vacuum, there was no sound, and that water, waves would move through water. Water could sit there or move, not be moving heavily, and the waves can move faster. So they knew light had some wave phenomena, and Newton and others observed that. And if there was a wave phenomenon, they figured there must be a medium for electromagnetic waves and for light. So they postulated that there must be this ether. And they were actually correct. But in the time of Einstein, and as a result of the Michelson-Morley experiment, they threw the ether out the window, which was, as Reich pointed out, a catastrophic error in modern science. Everybody quotes the Michelson-Morley experiment as being null or zero. And I'll explain how they did this. The device they were using, the interferometer, to measure the ether, they're saying it came up with a null effect. But in fact, when they graphed their data, it came up that there was something running at about 5 to 7.5 kilometers per second, which is pretty fast. But because they were expecting it to be like 200 kilometers per second, they decided that it must have been a null effect. And then there was Dayton Miller, he's the most important one, who came along and did very extensive experiments with it. Actually, I'm going to skip this part for the moment. This is from a talk that Dr. DeMeo did that you can look up called CosmicEther Exists. It's posted on one of my associates' websites called conversationsofnote.org. You see a picture of Albert Michelson here. He's the one who invented this instrument that everybody uses for detecting ether and movement in outer space, called the interferometer. And this is Dayton Miller. That's a picture of Dr. DeMeo talking about the subject. Okay, the interferometer, and I don't want to go in too much detail, so I kind of skip over this. I want you to get the essence of it, though. All right, the interferometer, the way it works is it reflects light. You have a series of mirrors in these corners so that you send out a single light beam that goes through a partially blocked mirror, so you create a branch between the lights. And then through a series of mirrors, they keep bouncing back and forth, back and forth, back and forth, until they converge at the beginning again. And the idea is that you're creating a light path in two different directions while you're slowly spinning this instrument. And the idea is that if there is this ether moving through space, it should impact the speed of light, so that when these two beams that are from a single beam come back together, if there's no ether, then they should line up exactly. But in fact, the experiments show they don't line up exactly. And not only do they not line up exactly, but the fringe shift that's created, as you can see, like in this drawing here, well, actually, here's a bigger one. There's a whole movement that when you graph the details, when you measure that, you find that, in fact, the pattern of movement is coordinated with sidereal time. It's coordinated with cosmic coordinates, not with local ones, with civil time. It doesn't go by the 24-hour clock. It goes by the sidereal cosmic clock, which means there is some cosmic influence that the interferometer is measuring. And this is scientific evidence of it. And just to kind of to contrast Michelson-Morley with Miller, Michelson-Morley, they used an interferometer in a basement and did like over 6 days, did like 20 turns of the machine, whereas Dayton Miller, over years, did it up on a mountaintop with a much longer device, with much more detail, taking hundreds of thousands of readings. So, which one is going to carry more weight? And yet Miller has been erased from history. This is the contrast this with a basement in Cleveland. Here you have out near Pasadena at Mount Wilson. Miller had a small cabin built mostly of wood because of the relationship to the ether and wood. It's a little more transparent. This is up on a mountaintop, and here it is. He's shielding it to shield out thermal effects. If you can see in that drawing, it's way up on that cliff. This is actually only about 100 meters from the whole observatory at Mount Wilson. So this is some serious research. And you can see in these graphs that with the top graph, you can see there's a coordination that matches sidereal time, whereas the bottom one is all chaotic and all over the place, showing that the measurements he's getting, the experiment is showing that there is something out in space, something moving, something that isn't being recognized or isn't being acknowledged. But like I said, it keeps forcing itself on us. So we have concepts like the neutrino sea or the neutrino wind, the electric universe. All these things are zero-point energy. They're all touching on that there's something there, but something about it is vague and not specific. And Miller is one of the best at showing that, in fact, it's very specific, and it has a movement through space, as you can see in this drawing too. This is part of Miller's conclusions. Now, I'm going to skip over that. There was another researcher, Giorgio Picardi, who did research with solutions in suspension and would map over time the way, because this was important in the dye industry. They needed to have consistency in producing dyes and the dye manufacturing. But there was inconsistencies in the way the suspensions would come out. So you wouldn't have consistency in the colors. So Picardi was doing experiments and found, this is over years, again, I'm giving you a nutshell version, found that you could coordinate the rate of pulling things out of suspension in these chemical mixtures would coordinate with where the Earth was in its path around the sun and where that path was in the context of the galaxy. He actually showed these coordinates were cosmic and that there was a cosmic influence on chemical matters. There's also Frank Brown, who was famous for something called external cosmic biological clocks. Again, after he died, he was pushed out of the history books, where he did years of experimentation with things with microorganisms, oxygen uptake in beans, water uptake in trees, and things like that, mapped it out over years and showed again the speed of these phenomena would change according to cosmic factors. So again, showing that there's some relationship between this cosmic energy and chemistry and biology. Okay, Reich's trying to bring this together. Okay, Reich, and this is where we're offering, Reich is offering, and DeMeo, a whole different paradigm that's very profound for understanding life and the universe and astrophysics in this case. This is Reich's theory of cosmic superimposition. Okay, Reich, discovered this blue glowing biocosmic energy found in microbes and people and plants and mass-free in the atmosphere and in high vacuum. Okay, that's all demonstrated in a laboratory. And it had a role in solar system and galactic spiral motions. And the motions that Reich was determining were also fully consistent with Miller's work. That's just a picture of Reich there. This energy Reich discovered, I love showing these pictures. I'm just going to zoom through these. It's this blue energy. Just without, you can do a whole lecture on this, on the blue in nature. Famously, the Earth has this blue marble look from outer space. Has this blue energy field around it. You have photographs when it's in a really concentrated form. Here's a picture a guy took in Greece where the atmosphere is glowing blue. Like, what is that blue stuff? It's a little hard to see, but there's little blue spots or bions. Reich found that when you break matter down, it always, if you put it in solution, it forms into these pulsating blue things, these energy vesicles. Everything does. This is a quartz crystal. This is seconds after the quartz has been heated to incandescence and dropped into water and then photographed. And all of a sudden you see all these little blue things, these round things appearing in there. If you look at red blood cells, if you can see this, if you look at the blue glow around the cell, not the blue in the middle of it, that might even be an artifact, but the blue glow around the living cell. Your red blood cells are blue. What's that about? There's blue, blue, blue. There's blue all over the universe, the Andromeda galaxy. You see this blue glow, and if you extend it out, you can see it just kind of tapers off. There's a concentration of stuff there. It's like, what is that stuff? Famous cover of the Life magazine in 1969 of the astronaut. You know, this is on the cover of the thing, and this was not a retouched photo. What is this blue stuff around the astronaut? It doesn't show up in some of the pictures, but it shows up in some of them. Look at that. It's gorgeous. Just a little bit about Reich isolating the energy. His main device he invented was called the Orgone accumulator. Best book on this is Dr. DeMeo's The Orgone Accumulator Handbook. This goes into all the detail that I'm skipping over. And the best thing, especially for the scientists here, is to build your own devices. You got to get your hands into this stuff. This isn't just conceptual. This is real. It's physically real. And in the world of ergonomy, people were basically, not only it's basically required that you get therapy to deal with your armoring, but it's required that you replicate these experiments yourself or participate in replications so that you can see and convince yourself there is some other phenomenon that's very real throughout space and finds its expression everywhere we look, except that we, in many cases, can't see it, but you can scientifically demonstrate. This is Dr. DeMeo's Orgone room. Okay, the whole thing is built like an Orgone accumulator. These are a couple of the accumulators inside of it. These are box fixtures, kind of what Dr. DeMeo would describe as hollow capacitors, which I'll explain in just a second, which you can sit inside of and they concentrate. Here's the inside. They concentrate this energy from the atmosphere, believe it or not. It looks crazy, it sounds crazy, but it's actually real. And it has measurable effects on health, both psychically and somatically. Just very quickly, the construction of it, of an Orgone blanket or of the cabinet, you have some type of organic matter, which the best seems to be those with a high dielectric, again, for the scientists in the group. You know, any material that tends to hold like a static charge is particularly good for Orgone accumulators. Then you put layers of steel wool. So you're alternating this more organic stuff with the steel. The steel should be ferromagnetic. If a magnet sticks to it, it works better and isn't toxic. If you use something like copper or aluminum, that has a more toxic effect. Anyway, so you're alternating these layers of, in this case, felt and steel wool, and you put it all together, and you put the accumulator with metal on the inside and some type of press board on the outside, and Reich discovered that you have an accumulating effect just by virtue of the orgone being attracted to the high dielectric material and being reflected by the metal, so that you get a net effect of energy concentration on the inside of the cabinet. It's a simple experiment that anybody can do. The Dr. DeMeo, I observed this many times. I should mention that, you know, not only did Dr. DeMeo replicate pretty much all of the major discoveries of Reich, I was fortunate enough over that 20 to 25 years to directly participate in and observe all these myself, so I can speak to their authenticity until you get the opportunity to do it yourself. It's a seed sprouting experiment where, again, you match everything thermally and in terms of light and how much water you give it, and you find that consistently the seeds that grow inside the accumulator come out considerably larger than the control. Very interesting. This is a vacuum tube that Reich charged up. I mentioned this in the previous talk. It didn't show a picture, I don't think. It's a vacuum tube. Okay, so there's no air in there, so there's no ionization effect. How is it when you run a voltage through that it starts to glow blue? What's glowing? What's going on there? Dr. DeMeo replicated this, except he took it another level. This one, there's no electricity applied. This one, you just stroke your hand over the tube, and from your own Orgone energy, it excites the tube and it flashes. Again, this is a 0.5 micron tube. There's no air in there for ionization. This photograph is actually a 20-minute long photograph. He just stood there stroking it with a time-lapse photography. And after 20 minutes, he developed it, and this is the image. It looks like a white flash when you're seeing it, but the long exposure, you see it's actually blue. This is Reich's book on his cosmology called Cosmic Superimposition. DeMeo felt that this book is as important and revolutionary as Galileo's world-changing book called The Sidereal Messenger from back in 1610. That's the book where Galileo got in trouble with the church because he showed that the moon was not a perfect ball, like the church was saying. He also showed there were way more stars than you could see with the naked eye because he was using a telescope that he built. And also he observed the moons of Jupiter, which weren't supposed to be there. This, of course, is not a big deal to us, but this was radical and life-threatening to him at the time. Anyway, Dr. DeMeo feels, and I would agree, that Reich's understanding of this process of superimposition, which is based on energy streams coming together in spirally forms and vortices, that this is what you see throughout nature, in outer space, in weather patterns, in the body, in physiology. It's all vortices and spirals and spinning waves and coming together and separating. This is a whole different cosmology. As he says, it's a unifying theory of life, weather, the cosmos, and there's a whole component in gravitation to this. So I show this graphic, this from Dr. DeMeo's book. This is where on sidereal time and the sidereal clock there, you see this big arrow. He plots 17 different researchers doing interferometer type experiments. One of them was using radio waves instead of an interferometer. And they all keep finding there's this stuff moving through space, spinning around the Earth, spinning in the arms of the solar system and through the galaxy. And everybody keeps finding there is this stuff. I'm going to go back real quick. This other drawing that I skipped over. Sorry that it's not in order here, but it's important. Wow, went through a lot of slides here. Okay, so this is sort of DeMeo's integration of this from this substantive dynamic gravitational ether paradigm now. This taking astrophysics to another level. You understand it's not just like the Earth is in the center from the Aristotle view, and it's not even the Galilean and Kepler view of everything spinning around the sun. There's actually a whole vortex of energy that's taking the planets around the sun, and it's being called gravity, but it's actually this spiraling vortex of the Orgone energy through space. Let's go back up here again. We'll be wrapping up shortly because the main thing is to get to questions. And as I'm saying all this out loud, I realize, my God, I am covering so much stuff here. So I hope you're staying with me. I'm just about to wrap up. So if there is this stuff in space, I'll just point out a couple of these things that Dr. DeMeo lists in his book. And again, without going into detail, but just to give you an idea of how the ether, if there is this ether in space, how it changes the cosmic theories. There's the LIGO, if you all know what that is. There's that giant interferometer. It's like miles long, and it's being claimed to detect gravity waves. But in fact, and that's only in empty space. If you factor in the ether, it's just as well explained, maybe even better, as ether turbulence. But nobody's looking at it or investigating that way. Atomic clocks seem to have something weird in their time, and they invoke Einstein in changing of time. But that's because Einstein threw out the ether. With the ether, it's known that that inertia has a variability factor. That could explain why the atomic clocks go off. There's questions about GPS. There's inconsistencies and anomalies. Again, we want to look at the anomalies and the contradictions. There's anomalies where the atomic clocks, are they being warped by space-time? Or again, is it, I'm sorry, the GPS, again, is it the ether wind? Or is it, Einstein's relativity at work? Anyway, there's a whole list here. Halton Arp, I love Halton Arp's work, astronomer who was run out of the country for taking pictures in space that dispelled the foundation of the Big Bang theory, and the Big Bang advocates didn't like that, so they simply refused to let Arp use the telescopes anymore. They didn't like the pictures he was taking. The whole basic cosmological view today is based on redshifts and cosmic background radiation, right? Well, once you factor in the ether, you realize the background radiation could be slight temperature variations. And the red shift is not just a distance indicator, but can also be related to the ether. So anyway, just pointing out, all this stuff is just waiting to be broken open and investigated. And the last thought here, this is one of those Hubble telescope pictures of deep space. This is actually a very profound photograph because when you look at it, you see the universe is not so chaotic. I mean, if you look carefully, at first it looks like chaos, but if you look carefully, there's every one of these structures is like a spiral structure with arms at some degree coming together into a center. There's all these shapes and forms that are being driven by a consistent thing, suggesting a spontaneous motion and a self-organization. There's not an outside force making that happen. And this photograph is a profound suggestion of that. Now I have, I'm not going to read all this. I had a couple of concluding comments. I think instead of going through all that, it's going to come out in the questions of how I'm linking all this together, saying that, okay, we know scientifically there is this orgone energy, and it's different from ether, it's different from God. It's this prime mover, and it's immediately accessible. You can use it, you can concentrate it. You know, there's no mystery there. It's scientifically demonstrable. But we also know because of our armoring and our blockage of spontaneous motion, structure and motion in the universe suddenly become separated. And then our own armoring moves our imagination in a way that we start inventing any kind of structure we want to explain the universe and any kind of motion without letting the two phenomena restrain each other, which happens naturally, you know, if you're more in touch with the orgone. Let me just, I just want to open that up to questions because there's so much there. Yeah. And again, as I'm a little ambitious in what I want to share and things. And because I'm so used to this stuff, I'm putting all this together and I'm going through the whole thing of relationship between armoring and the orgone and how it makes it difficult to see the orgone, but the orgone is real. And as in scientists and in spirituality, we want to recognize the reality of the orgone. You know, let me make a point about that. You know, when I'm talking about the orgone and this relationship to God, because obviously that's incredibly controversial and unsettling to people. You say, are you saying there's no God? It's actually no. It's just saying that the God is we've used God as a concept to actually keep us away from nature to a certain degree instead of bringing us into deeper contact with it. So we're actually missing out on life in a certain degree. And part of the evidence for that is these dualities. Again, it's just like God and ether, you know, spirituality and science. We know there's a connection, but we're okay with them being separate somehow. And it's because because of our own armoring, we can't feel that connection. So it's a tool to explore that I offer with you. It doesn't mean, in terms of spirituality, it doesn't mean stop praying, right? It doesn't mean give up your practice. It doesn't give up your meditation. But what it does mean is look seriously at your prayer, at your meditation, at your practice, and see how much of it is coming from your core, and you really are trying to connect with nature and the universe and your relationship to everything, and how much of it is actually being driven by emotional defenses that are stirred up by anything in the face of something that's self-organizing and that moves spontaneously. So I'm just saying that my proof that is still part of the case is the fact that we still have this dualism, and that once we get past that, we will actually be even reconceptualizing what the scientists were calling ether and what the mystical traditions call God. So that's my version of pushing the envelope, Crystal, and I look forward to I hope I kept people with this and wasn't too all over the place, and look forward to hearing your questions or criticisms or comments or whatever you want. I'm open.
Oh, how could we be criticizing you? I mean, it's a very thought-provoking presentation, and we are so honored to have, well, amongst us here present in this crowd are some renowned scientists in the free energy community, one of them being Jean Manning. Welcome to the physics platform. We are so honored to have you here. You're gracing our platform, and we are very, very honored indeed. And well, there is Mike Emery, of course, you know, some of the most thought-provoking quantum physicists, and a couple of others that I have not quite recognized because you're using other names. Pontus is here. Pontus has been with me and Fresh right from the start, and he has helped set up the R&D teams, and we're very grateful to him and his dedication. Thank you for coming back, even though you're traveling. Okay, question time. Our co-host, our co-chair, Dr. Fresfresel is not present, so I have to do the chairing on my own. I hope that, well, I'm a lay person. I'm not a scientist, but I've learned to be digging in deep into the science part of things since I started physics, and it has helped me develop my awareness of what's out there. Right. So I actually wanted to put this the way a layman would put it to you, Tom, because I'm starting the ball rolling with the first question before
Sure.
I open it up to the floor, as I could see quite a number of questions being posted on chat, right? So I wanted to say this, okay? I am curious because if you're talking about the quark being the main constituent of matter that together forms the hadron.
The
So
quartz? The
we are
quartz?
talking the quark,
Oh, the quark.
Q-U-A-R-K.
Yes.
Yeah, the
Okay.
quark. So if you're talking about the quark, and it is the gluon that makes it move, that gives it life, right? Because the gluon will be the unificating factor here that gives it life. So if you're talking about the ubiquitous fluid of the orgone, is that similar or equating to the quark?
No, it's not equating to it. The First of all, the challenging thing is looking at where the actual evidence is of some of the quantum claims. We know the Orgone energy is clear, is real, but quantum mechanics doesn't account for it. It aims in it. It kind of aims. It tries to get there, but it's not accounting for this reality. And so there's going to be dualities in there. You know, like the quark. You know, all the particles. You know, it's like the whole wave and particle duality. You know, the mechanical view is going to reduce things to parts and particles, right? So the quark is a particle. So in orgonomy, and from a functional perspective, you're not just reducing things to parts. You're going to actually the unit you're going to reduce them to is a continuum, a whole continuum of energy, and within that continuum, all the parts, all the units are actions. None of them are things, because matter is looked at as a secondary thing that comes out of a mass-free energy in Reich's work. Not sure if that's answering your question. Just trying to.
Okay. No, I'm trying to equate it to my own understanding of the quark, the components of the atomic nuclei, and the gluon plasmas that you were mentioning. That is the orgone in itself that is binding the particles in the cosmos, right? That gives it life, basically. So I presume the gluon that is binding the particles would be kind of explaining the orgone energy.
Oh, I see what you're saying. Yes, I think that would be a correct and safe assumption to go on to test. You know, is the gluon an actual physical thing, or is it something the theoreticians are putting in there to account for the orgone that they may be denying? That's you understand? So that I don't actually know, but that's what I would investigate myself. Is the gluon a holding place, like a bookkeeping device,
like a binder?
Like if you don't have the orgone, then you need the gluon.
Yeah. So that is like sparking life into the particle. So it's kind of like that gives it the blue glow, as what you were mentioning, that is glowing in DeMeo's lab in the little experiment of his. So I'm trying to equate to the blue glow, as in the blue room that Dr. Anna Michaela was describing to us, that heals everything. And if they were to go to the blue room that was channeled through Jay-Z Knight of Ramtha, from the Ramtha, that they built a blue room where it's kind of like, I wouldn't say it's a made bed, but if you go in there with imperfection, it kind of like realigns it and rearranges it and balance it, and you come out better. I wouldn't say completely healed because you have to go there many times, right?
Is there an actual blue glow or something in the room?
Yeah, the natural blue glow in the room has the blue hues in the whole room that people are going for healing. So I was wondering whether that is kind of the blue factor, the glow that you're talking about, that comes from the Orgone energy, because it's plasma as well. Yeah.
How are they generating the blue? Do you know?
Yeah.
Are they using an electromagnetic device, or how are they? What are they? Is it the construction of the material? How are they generating the blue?
Oh, I have no idea. I have not been to the blue room. Has anybody here been to Anna Michaela's blue room? You are to unmute yourself and speak up. Anyway, that is something to think about, really. I mean, we can discuss that later. And I think I would like to. Is there any hands up for the next? I'm opening the session now to the Q&A. So if you have any impertinent question, would you put up your hands? And okay, before that, I suppose we have a couple of comments in the chat that I would like to read out to you, because this has already been posted in the course of your presentation. So we have Urs from Germany. Urs was asking, if we restructure the water, the weather gets in motion, same all over. So how do you address this?
I didn't understand the second part. So say that again.
If we restructure the water, Urs, would you like to ask the question live? Can you unmute yourself? Urs, can you ask the question?
Yes, I'm here. Hi. The armoring is based on the water normally, and we do weather work, and if we restructure the water in the field, then we get movement into the weather. Very simple. And the moment we try this, we also made a new.
Well, we can't hear you because you're fading out in and out.
Cutting in and out. Let me see if I can see.
And now we are trying to on the new tests.
Yeah, I'm afraid, Urs, we have to move on. So we've got to get Tom to comment on this very quickly before we move on to Andrew, who has put up his hand.
Except unfortunately, I didn't understand the question. He's talking about restructuring water to affect the weather, but what is he doing to restructure it? I mean, I can't comment on it because I don't understand what he's doing.
Yeah. How can we restructure water and mass? I don't understand either, Urs. Yeah.
Okay, I have a comment here about the blue.
Yes.
It comes from Rudolf Steiner, where the idea is that blue is the color of going forward. So it could be part of the reintegration process involved with Orgone. Anything for restructuring. That's what you're seeing is the proof that something is being reintegrated back to normal.
When the blue is present, you're seeing an active reintegration. Is that what you're saying?
Yeah, that's what I'm suggesting. And also, what I'd like you to know, maybe you're aware, there's the Marcel Vogel was one of my colleagues who studied very carefully bions because he had good microscopes at IBM. And eventually, we got to a better microscope by Gaston Naissance. And he said, my God, I'm seeing all this very clear. And that was, of course, looking at things surrounding or in the space in between blood cells as being very bright and bluish and so on. And that was what he called somatides or somatid. That means in Greek, very small. And he's saying that must be bions. So this was a common thing that spreads in the space between blood cells, and of course also can be seen as affecting as some blood cells showing off the bluish color. So yes. I think the beautiful synthesis that you have done, which is multidimensional, is helping to understand many things, including in quantum biology, as you place, that is still too categorical. Thank you.
Oh, thank you, Andrew. Andrew, can you keep in touch with me, because I'm looking for speakers, and I'm so honored that you have jumped in today, and your colleague, you're working with Marcel Vogel, right?
Okay.
Oh,
Thank you.
What was the name of the researcher who did the bion work you mentioned? Could you spell it?
Yes, the researcher with IBM was Marcel Vogel. He was the chief scientist of IBM.
Vogel. Okay.
Yeah, he's the guy who made fluorescent colors, I'm sorry. And he also made the disk memory system and worked a lot with crystals. So what even you mentioned about certain quartz, like the blue quartz, was also of interest to him. But I think his great happiness was to be able to see clearly and distinctly and very fine the somatides, the actual, what he called, this is really bions and proof.
Did he publish anything, and is he still alive?
Yes, I can send you that if I can have your email address.
Yeah, please do.
Is he still alive, Andrew?
No, he died about 20 or 30 years ago. Gaston.
Yeah, of course.
No, I'm sorry. Marcel Vogel died many years ago, like in the 90s. And Gaston Naissance died about 15 years ago. And he is a sheriff of Quebec and had the... Okay, I'll send you all information about some of these too. Thank you.
Great.
I'm a fan of his work. Can somebody talk about the crystals that he developed? Can you, Andrew, one day?
Yes, Marcel Vogel worked with lots of crystals, yes.
Yes.
He did after he retired from as chief scientist of IBM. He had his own, I think it was called Psychic Labs. I'll give you that information.
Wonderful. Can you write to me? Please write to me. Yeah.
I have your email.
Peace. You got my email address? Okay, wonderful.
Yes, I have.
Yeah. Okay,
Thank
now, thank you so much, Andrew, for your input here. Okay, do we have any hands up, Henrik? Are you looking at some Pontus? Are you looking at anybody putting the hands up? Otherwise, I will call upon Jean Manning. Would you like to share your take on this orgonomy? Can you unmute yourself? Is it all right if I ask you to say a few words here? Okay, you're not responding. Probably your microphone's not working. What about Mike Emery? Would you like to say a few words, because you're dealing with the bubble tech organites? You being a quantum physicist,
Well, a little bit exciting, probably. The somatids and the bions and George Merkel's chondriana are all the same thing. And Merkel observed that with these chondriana, that once they would line up 6 in a line, and then the 7th one hooked on, they'd circle up and become a living cell. So the bions and the somatids do the same thing. They're the precursors to stem cells, aren't they? And so and the blue is obviously the color of orgone. That's how those blue roos work. But Tom, we've been doing for 9 years bubble tech, which is what we call firing up, orgone, large orgone pieces with violet ray wands, Tesla violet ray wands, and they have a base rate of 33,333 cycles per second. And that rate is the root rate of creation, really. In capacitance fields, there's no frequency. There's no electromagnetic. You got light, but you don't have any other waveform other than 3. And the 3 comes out of the Anu, A-N-U, first name of God, Babylonian text of Vedas, which is the God particle. Higgs boson is the Anu. It's been known about for 7,000 years. It's been very well reported, very well diagrammed. Its properties are well known, so on and so forth. And Victor Schauberger's works proved up the Anu, the different forms of spin, centripetal and centrifugal primarily. But the centripetal is the problem of the world. It's the DNA shape, and it remembers things, and all memories portend a future shit show, which we have going on here, which we devised. We did devise. And so what bubble tech does and what capacitance does, and it's like the Ciba-Geigy effect, where you have, it goes backwards in time, and all living organisms revert to an earlier form. And they're like, wow, okay, that's the Ciba-Geigy effect. Where'd the information come from? Well, it's always there in the ethers. Okay, well, what holds the information in the ethers? Got to be some kind of structure. Okay, and it's spin, because it's like you say, there's just within the orgone fields or the capacitance fields, you find all kinds of vortices, spins both ways, centripetal and centrifugal. And so then you get vibrations on down the line. You don't have vibrations there yet. You just have spin. And everything comes from that ultimately. And the Anu is 2 kind of rotating spins. And it's once you understand the Anu, you look at the somatids and the bions and the chondriana and stem cells and all that stuff, and it all ties together. It's all non-polar, undifferentiated. You go, whoa, there's no frequencies there. Correct. Sometimes we have idiots, but sometimes we don't.
Right, Mike. Thank you so much for your taking. Yeah.
Let me finish.
Yeah, sure.
There's a blink rate to creation, because of the ethers. The ethers are vertical to us, and we quite literally blink through them. I can show you pictures of that. That we blink through the ethers. And so what bubble tech does is we have very powerful capacitance field, and we put our images into the gaps in the ethers, which is basically the same thing the Ciba-Geigy effect does, right? And then blink just like that. It goes from one thing to another. So bubble tech has gotten miracles that are mind-boggling. That's verifiable, unmatched in human history. Quite mind-boggling, And like I say, there's no mystery about it. We've been doing it for years. And so it is that we're able to install our ideas, our Imagineering, into the gap, which is the capacitance field, and it then mirrors off and becomes reality. Okay? And so that's really what everything is, starts as images. Within the spin, you've got light. Okay, the photons are spin, they do spin. They're anus, and so that remembers things and carries information, and it all starts right there, with light. Yeah. And so when you change the light, you change everything, and that's what we do. That's what is happening worldwide. We got purple skies worldwide, and so that I tracked it back. I checked, used AI, checked it back. That happened when we started bubble tech. When bubble tech started up was when the purple skies, they're becoming more and more and more pronounced worldwide. Now, blue is the color of capacitance, but purple is the color of euphoria. And so they do link up, kind of. I mean, when you look at the the way the spectrum works, the colors don't merge too much at the boundary layers, very little. And you can actually see where that happens, because there's the ethers, the lines that define the ethers are actually spin. So you have a little bit of a washing machine going on there, but you've always got spin everywhere, just like you say, and so by bubble tech, we've got a problem. The Earth right now is inundated with microplastics and nanoaluminum, both of which are poisons for folks and living things. And there's no possible way for us to physically clean it up. So it can only be done by a operation in consciousness. And since bubble tech is able to do these unbelievably massive miracles at huge distances from everybody, via our intentions, then it was our intentions that made the matter in the first place, and we therefore have dominion over it. And that's what bubble tech does, is it proves that us humans collectively are the godhead of creation, and the village idiots are manifesting a shit show. But that's okay.
Mike, I have to stop you there because we are running out of time. The second session speaker is going to start soon. And we have a lot of questions here that I have to go through here. I'm just doing my duty as chair here, Mike. I hope you don't mind. I really need to push on.
I got it done. Thank you.
Yeah, we will ask you to talk another time. And okay, I have a question from Eric Craig. Oh, no, sorry. Before I go to Eric, I want to thank Dr. Jean Manning for saying a few words about Andrew. Yeah, I was wondering whether he really comes from a background that is really going to help me with looking for a good speaker to speak. I think Andrew would do the job. Thank you so much, Jean, for saying that Andrew Mikrowski should be honored for his decades of Planetary Association of Clean Energy work. Wow, thank you so much. It's so good to have you here. I'll be in touch. Yeah, you put your email address there, wonderful, in chat. Okay, so next question is Eric Krieg. He says, does anyone know of any existing repeatable demonstrations of significant free energy not coming from prosaic sources like solar or earth heat? Okay, well, anyway, I think it's not relevant to your presentation here, is it, Tom?
Well, indirectly, because I mean, he's talking about a free energy type thing, right?
Yeah.
I mean, Reich did invent an orgone motor, although he didn't reveal the secret to people. He didn't feel humanity was ready for it, but he definitely did succeed. And I know he succeeded because I've seen things that are very close to what he did, but not exactly what he did. So I know it's a real phenomenon.
Wonderful. And folks, if you ask questions or you have any comments, please keep it short because we are short of time. And in physics customary R&D session, it's just questions, no lectures, please. And we have Bobosia saying, sorry. Thank you so much, Bobosia, for dropping wanting to drop me two names. And okay, that will speak at our physics platform. I really, truly appreciate you. Please write to me, Bobosia. Okay, so we push on. Now, is there any hands up, Jerry, Henrik, Pontus? Is there anybody with the hands up? Because I can't see everything chairing the meeting now. If there are, could you please unmute yourself and speak
To
up and
revere or
ask?
something.
Yeah, Jerry.
There was one, Andre something, but I can't see him now.
Yes.
Audrey or Andre?
Andre something.
Andre. Andre, would you speak your question out, please? Because I don't see it from chat.
You're talking to me? Oh, no.
Andre
no.
or Andrew? No, Andre has a question. Andrew,
I don't think he is here anymore. I can't see him, so I think
Andrew, we have you speak at our platform, okay?
Okay, so what I was going...
Yeah.
Yeah.
I want to invite you to speak.
Okay.
Go on
What
then.
I wanted to say, there is a free energy device that is even been patented, and that's the motionless energy generator, created with Thomas Bearden. So you just have a proper setup of coils, you figure out the frequency you want to obtain, and you get the result once you give it a kick. So that is, I can give you information on that too.
Wonderful. Of course, yeah.
And of course, the explanation could be associated with what DeMeo talked about and Reich. It could be.
Wonderful.
Okay.
Are you working with the SEG team, Andrew? No.
Beg your pardon?
Are you working with the SEG team?
No.
Okay.
No, it's MEG, motionless
MEG.
energy. Yes,
Sure.
I'm working with them, yes.
Okay, wonderful. I was mentioning SEG, not MEG. That's wonderful. Yeah, would love to be in touch with you. So anyway, anybody else has any question? Okay, we have, I won't call out your name because it's not fair if you don't have a question in mind.
I'm
All right.
curious, I'm curious. I mean, I get asked if, generally speaking, was none of this new to people? Was some of it new? was it confusing? Was it clear? I'm not sure how to interpret. I mean, usually there's like all these questions. There's like no questions. It's like, so I don't know how to interpret them.
All right. Okay, so folks, there being no other business, since there are no questions here, I would like to adjourn this first session to the second session. Oh, we have a hand up, Jerry.
I have a quick
Okay, Jerry.
question.
Sure.
The armor part, have you thought anything about, can we come by it in some way to not be hindered by it in some way?
Well, it's a therapeutic question and a psychiatric question, because it's, it has to do with repressing emotion and energy. Just our natural impulses in life as children is where the problem is. When you have armored adults raising children, they tend to keep thwarting all the natural impulses of the children, because those impulses make the parents anxious because of their own armoring. So they tend to put all these restrictions that confuse the child, so the child does not develop in a way that they can self-regulate. So they end up developing all these defensive structures, whether it's in their body through rigidity in their muscles, or just their thinking becomes defensive, so that they can't approach something that interests them because there's too much anxiety. So it's a serious problem. Short of getting therapy, which is a real thing, but there aren't that many therapists, part of my goal is just at least to raise the issue, to start. And the goal would be to reacquaint people as much as I can with their core functioning. What does that mean? What Reich called core functioning. What is it to be in touch with our natural human needs, our natural capacity for pulsation and oscillation, our natural capacity for emotional expression, and particularly sexual expression? What is healthy sexuality? I mean, just to raise these questions, because on some level we all know. Like I said, it's in the distance, it's in a fog. So short of just, there's no instant way to clear the fog, but you can appeal to people at a deep emotional level and try to inspire them in a way that they go, okay, that makes sense. There's something there that I want to pursue. And it may inspire them to want to get healthier themselves and learn more about themselves, start working with their own inner conflicts from their childhood. All that stuff is real. But what hasn't been appreciated is how it affects perception and even scientific work. In Reich's work, the emotional health of the scientist plays a role in the actual experimentation. And that's a really controversial thing and a serious problem. Like I said, if we're kind of riddled with a sense of duality and we settle for duality, we're not going to get to those unified theories, because we can't feel the unification within our own bodies. So there's not an easy answer, but at least the start is to do, at least on my part, do what I can to appeal to people's inner core, our deepest nature, so that it can bring it out a little more and raise your curiosity to want to do more for yourself and to do more healing yourself.
That was it was a great answer, because I saw some in the chat and it was more on the technological side. So it was a really good answer. Thanks.
Appreciate that.
Oh, thank you. I couldn't help but I'm curious because you were talking about the orgonomy in assisting with the sexual energy. I think it has veered out of track in the human evolutionary pathways where what's going on in this particular development stages in the human species, because if we are looking at sexual energy being sex as being a procreation instead of recreation, it has gone haywire. How would you think that the orgonomy could help to pull it back on track with the ascension spiritual pathways for the human species when it comes to this one?
No, it's a very interesting and important question, and there's a number of parts to it. I'll just try to be real brief. Okay, one of Reich's earliest discoveries was, and it's the name of his first book in English, was Function of the Orgasm. He was the one who found out that the orgasm is not just a reproductive function; it has an energy regulating function, what you called recreation, but you would see it as energy regulation. That there's a natural charging and discharging of the organism just in everyday life, and we expend a lot of that energy in our activities and thought and stuff like that. But there's always this residual backlog that concentrates in what we call the erogenous zones. That's just where it goes biophysically. And then that energy needs to be concentrated down into the sexual organs, where through full body convulsions, there's a discharge of this energy. And that's a regular process. Just like, we don't eat once in our lifetime or 5 times. We don't go to sleep 2 times in our life. And it's the same thing with the sexual process. It's not supposed to be just when you're having a baby. That has profoundly destructive consequences to your psyche and your body, because you're going to have all this energy generated that has somewhere to go, and your body's going to have to bind it up. That's what the armoring does. But the consequence is you're no longer a whole person. You're not able to function as a whole person. Another thing related to what you were just asking, it's an interesting thing I hope I might be able to point out, is I think there's a confusion over the idea of the evolution of humanity. We look at all the sickness and the insanity, and we talk about we need to evolve. But what I'm doing by bringing in the armoring is pointing out that there's 2 levels here. There's natural development, but there's also healing. That a lot of what humanity is going through, I would argue, is not evolution, it's healing. It's because we're sick. The armoring is not a natural state of affairs. If one day in the future, I do the other talk on the armoring, Dr. DeMeo's discovery of what he called serrasia gives profound insight into what has happened over the last 6,000 years in repression of emotional energy and all the destructive consequences coming out of it. And then the last thing I'll mention in terms of what you were saying, it's interesting in terms of looking at solutions. Part of it is correctly framing the problem, right? So what they've done in orgonomy, some of the other researchers, like I mentioned, the American College of Orgonomy, all right, there's some good insights there where they looked at for like thousands of years, the main mechanism of repression, or the main mechanism of armoring has been through sexual repression. And then around the 50s and 1960s, it changed. Everything started opening up with what was called the sexual revolution, right? That wasn't necessarily a good thing. What happened was the armoring changed in the body. The armoring for 1,000 years was more related to the pelvis. So people could function, but there was this sexual repression. There was all this anxiety around sex. By the time of the 60s, it went to the opposite end of the spectrum. Then everybody was completely open about sex, but in fact, that was the license. I was talking about freedom and responsibility and license and moralism. It switched from moralism to license. And the armoring switches. The armoring was no longer in the pelvis socially. The armoring went up to what's called the ocular segment. And the ocular segment is characterized by confusion. So we went from sexual repression to sexual confusion. So if you understand that's a really beautiful way of characterizing what's been happening in the last 50 years, especially the last 20 years, is the sexuality has not been characterized by repression, it's been characterized by confusion. So with that framing, it gives you a different way to start approaching it. Well, why is there so much confusion? We studied the repression. Now there's confusion. There's a duality, right? We go from the repression to confusion. How are they connected? And that'll give us a little more insight into, again, it's going to come down to child rearing ultimately. And Reich said that. Ultimately, things have to come down to what he called the children of the future. He said, us adults are too sick. We've already shown that we can't fix the world. So we got to just raise children as healthy as we can so that they can eventually, do things themselves. The trick is we are armored adults raising unarmored children to be armored children. How do we diminish the armoring? And it's a doable thing, even though it sounds like a catch-22. There is hope.
Thank you. Thank you, Tom, for an answer in it. Anyway, Andrew has given you a compliment. He says, Tom Diferdinando, my comment that your presentation was superb and intelligence, multidisciplinary synthesis, which helped to bridge through multiple fields of research almost seamlessly. Thank you. That's wonderful, Tom.
I'll put that as a quote on my book. Thank you.
You can put that as a testimony in your website. Okay, so save chat, everyone, because there are links and there are more information and stuffs. Okay, you know how to save chat, right, attendees? You see 3 dots on the far right, okay? If you hover your mouse over the end of the chat and just click on it, and out will come this option of whether you want to save chat. So save, okay? So
I didn't show my last slide, so I'll put it in here. The website for Dr. DeMeo and the Orgone Biophysical Research Lab is orgonelab.org. Orgone, O-R-G-O-N-E, lab, L-A-B, one word, orgonelab.org.
Yes, your website is linked all over the place whenever your name is being mentioned, all over my FESIG website, it's all linked up, okay? On the invitation letter, it's all link. Hover the mouse over the speakers' names and you can get to their websites, okay? And I think if Dr. Jean Manning is still here, can I request that you speak at our platform as well one of these days? If you get in touch with me, I don't have your contact, if you would. I think some of our members do have your contact. And we will be so honored to have you as our speaker too. And okay, is there anything else? Ooh, okay, last one. I agree with Andrew. Superb outline. Thanks, Jobsik. Thanks, Tom. Okay, Yuan, you have any last say before we close? Johan.
That was well, like I said, as I went through, I didn't realize how dense it was what I was saying. Because I mean, I guess any of us have that problem. It's like you live your stuff, and you don't always appreciate, how to make it so simple. But I appreciate that one gentleman's comment. I mean, I hope the basic ideas got through. I have to wait a couple of days and then go back and see if I made sense to myself.
Every time I call someone to speak, they're not there. I'm sorry, folks. Okay, so thank you, Tom. I think that's it, right? Unless there's any impertinent question. What about Matt? Matty, bro, you got any question? Any last one? Pontus? Mona? Okay, no last say. Shall I wrap it up? Henrik?
Thank you, Crystal.
Yeah, Jerry? Okay. Yeah, sorry. Somebody's going to say something?
Well,
oh, Yuan, you've got your hand up. Go on then.
No, I just thought it was very interesting. And my background as a Buddhist, I've been practicing Buddhism for 40 years, and it comes quite close to how Buddhism describe this cosmic energy. So it was quite interesting. It was hard to understand all the scientific explanations, but as far as I could understand, it's actually quite close to what Buddhism tried to describe 3,000 years ago.
All right, thanks.
Okay, wow. That's a very familiar name. Alicia Keys, do you have
I'd like to
anything
comment
to
on the Buddhist
say?
stuff, please.
Oh, yeah. Be quick, Mike, because the next speaker is
Yeah,
already here.
quickly.
Yeah.
Yeah, I lived in a monastery, so I said a lot of that stuff.
Oh, yeah.
And the Buddhists found the actual lines of the ethers, the rectangular ethers, because their nirvana is in. I can show you a picture of it. What the four-sided ethers, rectangular ethers that light flows in, and obviously one of them is deep dark purple or violet, and that's nirvana. It's joyful there. You go there, it's very, very joyful, and that's all that's going on there.
Oh, thank you,
A little bit
Mike, for
boring in that
sharing that.
regard.
I
But it
appreciate you
should
for
be in the
sharing.
Buddhist. The Buddhists actually saw those lines of the ethers, and it was in some of the old Buddhist texts. I haven't been able to find it since. You know, been a while. Have you seen anything like that?
Anyway, there's a hand up.
No.
Jonathan Moore. Thank you, Mike, for sharing that. Jonathan Moore, you got your hand up. I need to quickly wrap this up. Yeah.
Yeah, just a quick question for Tom, who made a really interesting point about the character structure of the scientist needing to be taken into account when doing the research. Non-duality is a problem only for Western thinkers. So do you know of any Taoist or Sufi, for example, scientists who have looked at this problem? Because they wouldn't have that innate problem with duality.
Well, I would actually challenge that. I mean, usually I have to talk to these people directly and see exactly where they're coming from. I mean, if they're from the mystical traditions, again, I would want to see how much they're seeing things as unknowable or unreachable, or where you have to go through a whole process to get there, as opposed to realizing that, you know, the life energy is right here, right now. And then you also want to look at, in terms of character structure, the way they deal with sexuality, because that's a big core of where the anxiety is where people place sexuality in broader life processes, and that would include scientists. It makes a difference. It's controversial to say, it makes a difference if if you have a satisfying sex life or don't. You know, if you're going in with a lot more frustrations in life, it's going to impact your response to spontaneous phenomena in a laboratory. It just does. So yeah, I'd have to, if there's anyone who you would find who you would claim has that, I would like to see that. I'll give you one example. As a bodywork therapist, I did have the opportunity to meet one very famous guru person. I'm not going to say what his name was, because he had injured himself, and so they enlisted me to help him. And he was just like they would describe. He was a very lovely man, had a wonderful energy about him, and it was very sweet. But when I put him on the table, I have to honestly say he was one of the most physically rigid people I'd ever felt in my life. He had so successfully killed any healthy aggression or excitation that he just had a perfectly pure facade of peace and love. But his body betrayed the fact that there was a lot more going on. So anyway, I just use that as one example of how it's.
Thank you. That's fascinating. I'd say, though, that you're pointing out that you'd have to split the challenge from an ergonomic point of view because of non-duality from the challenge with the ergonomic point of view because of bad sexuality.
I wasn't sure that I understood, but I'll take your word.
It's debatable. Nassim Harriman, I was told just yesterday, has a discovery that he would conclude with a comment that, well, I think he discovered something to do with the fact they have discovered the chalice, or what do you call that? Anyway.
Chalice?
Yeah, and he said only a pure person without any sexual desire will be able to touch it and be able to have access to it. So, okay, that concludes the conversation here,
completely
folks.
Disagree. I completely disagree.
So anyway,
that's called sexual anxiety.
well, what about the monks in the monasteries and Mount Athos in Greece? They have elevated the evolutionary process to a point where they are able to go invisible, you know. And so the monks in Tibet and so on and so forth. Anyway, so that concludes our our first session, because Graham Forscott has been here for quite a long time. I don't know his schedule. So folks, there being no other business now, this first session of Physics 138 meeting is now adjourned to the second session. And thank you, Tom, for a superb presentation. And thank you, folks who chose to be here with us today, because there were 40 of us in the audience at some point, and some drop off now. And Dr. Jean Manning, thank you for joining us. And I wish one day you would speak at our platform. Thank you, folks. Namaste.
Thank you, Crystal.
Stop recording now.